Live on Super Bowl Sunday, even though it won't be live when you listen to it whenever we decide to upload this. It's the very first episode, since the last one didn't count, of the Broletariat Podcast. This is the Brothers of the Proletariat Podcast, shortened down to the Broletariat Podcast. For those of you who didn't get to catch the introduction from the last one, we're composed of myself, Joe Kaminski, Omar Wajeeh, who is not here today. He decided to ditch us to watch the Super Bowl, and Elijah Hintz.
That's me. And fuck Omar, and fuck sports, honestly. Fuck the Super Bowl. Fuck the NFL.
I have the similar mindset. I've never really been too into sports, but I can say one thing: fuck the Patriots, and I don't care. I'm not watching it right now. I can hear it playing in the other room.
I actually did bet on Atlanta. Okay, so I have this friend who I bet $20 that Trump would lose Florida. Because we both live in Florida, so I bet him double or nothing. That
I made a similar bet back then too, but I can hear the Super Bowl playing from the other room very faintly. I hope it's not picking up on the podcast. It shouldn't be, just because that's how it is. So. Good, yeah. That's great. So there are two people that are watching the Super Bowl. There are two people who are watching the Super Bowl right now, or I should say on Sunday, because I don't know when this is going to go live. The people who love the Patriots and the people who hate the Patriots. I don't think there's any actually fucking fans watching it. I think it's just everybody who hates the Patriots is rooting for the Falcons. But regardless, no more Super Bowl talk, since we're not watching it for a reason. I'm not sure exactly what we're doing on this podcast. If you haven't noticed, this is very less professional. I don't want to say completely unprofessional, because I do want that kind of aspect to go. But if you haven't noticed, this is a lot less professional than previous projects that have been on my website, which is josephkaminski.org, by the way. And honestly, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. We're just going to see how it is. But I can tell you one thing. There's going to be a lot less shouting with Omar not here today.
I'm looking forward to it.
Maybe Elijah will finally get to speak this time.
Yeah. Well, apparently Joe got to piss twice while Omar was ranting.
I just put the phone down and said, all right, he's going to talk.
Just muted yourself and, yeah.
Yeah, I just went on with my day. It's like, okay, another day with Omar.
That was the funniest thing when we ended the podcast and Omar was like, oh, I have to pee now, and you were just like, oh, well, I already went twice while you were ranting.
Yeah, because you never stop, man. It's a conversation, but it doesn't. We're just roasting him. Yeah. We know he's going to be listening to it. Actually, wait, how long have we been recording?
Already, it's like 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. All right, he hasn't listened this far. We're good. He doesn't listen that far. We're going to be fine. All right, so I'm going to let you go full speed on this conversation, Elijah. You sent me what you wanted to talk about. I am going to tell you the truth. I did not keep the page open, so I actually don't know what we're doing right now. I'm going to let you just start this conversation, if you don't mind.
All right. Well, I wanted to start by, we can roast Trump all day. I think that's actually pretty easy because,
and funny.
Yeah, well, but it's kind of lazy, It's beating a dead horse. A dead horse who's president of the United States, but still a dead horse.
I think a dead horse would probably be better.
Yeah, I think we should turn our attention more to the Democratic Party, actually. And we can't change Trump and we can't change the Republicans, but what we can do is change the Democratic Party. So I think that's where our focus should be oriented. So, if anything, this podcast is supposed to be about the movement much more than it's supposed to be about the local news or the immediate
news,
of
course,
right? Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah. This whole podcast stemmed from the fact, I know a lot of people are going to be looking at this. I know I mentioned this before. A lot of people are going to be looking at this logo, for example. The logo is irony. It's supposed to be out of control. I've already said this before. To my knowledge, neither me or either of my co-hosts are communists.
I am not.
I am not either. There is such a thing as too far left, just as there's such a thing as too far right. And if you're someone who does not believe that, then you're being kind of hypocritical in your political sense.
Well, that said, I have lots of friends who are communists, and I think they're great people. I disagree with them, and I don't want to live in their utopia.
Obviously, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I had someone. I wouldn't call him a friend. I'm not going to say names, but just an acquaintance, I should say, who called himself an anarcho. Is,
hey, we lost you. We lost you there for a quick minute. Who called themselves?
Back?
You had a friend who called themselves an anarcho-communist?
Yeah, an anarcho-communist, or something along those terms. I don't remember the exact term that he said, but he preached primitivism a lot on how, the state sucks and we should go back to the agricultural revolution and not do anything. But in his hand is a $600 iPhone, and on his wrist is a however how much an Apple iWatch is, and so he was pretty hypocritical of himself. But such is the thing. So basically, what I'm getting here is the Broletariat, Brothers of the Proletariat. The name of this came from a little quip that I said a few weeks ago to a few friends of mine. The entire election, the Democratic Party wanted to call us Bernie Bros, people who like Bernie Sanders, and they were millennial men who were basically anti-establishment. What was the term that they used against us the entire time? Bernie Bros. Kind of lame, not really effective, and it kind of backfired on them when tons of people started going with it. Now, I am going to admit, there were quite a few Bernie Sanders supporters, brand new to the world, who didn't really not know what they were doing, and they put their movement back. But that's just the thing. I like to call them deaf protesters. These are the protesters and the activists that really don't quite have a grasp of their movement yet, and so they ignore the history of their movement. And a lot of the quote-unquote Bernie bros, I count as deaf protesters, someone who liked the ideas that Bernie Sanders really had no idea what anything political is, you know what I mean?
I mean, a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters
made a quip.
Are awful people. Like, let's just get that out of the way. Like, just because you're a Bernie Sanders supporter and I share I share my preferred candidate with you doesn't mean you're a good person. Like, Bernie Sanders supporters are not immune from criticism. But and
that's the same for any candidate.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, though. Is like saying Bernie Bros is so ridiculous, considering that the defining demographic of Bernie Sanders supporters was young people. It wasn't like white men. It was young people. I mean, even though the Black and Latino community voted overwhelmingly for Clinton, young Black people and young Latino people voted overwhelmingly for Sanders in the primary, at least. So I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've noticed all sorts of that. We talked in the last episode about Clinton supporters. This is kind of going to be a little bit of both. We're going to be making fun of Clinton supporters, Bernie supporters, and your point is clear that there are negative people in every party. There are also good people in every party. If you voted for Donald Trump, and there's a good chance that you were just conned. You're a member of that Rust Belt that has felt screwed over for so long, and you want to change, and now that change is going to backfire on you. Kudos. But that doesn't make you a bad person just because you voted.
There are people for whom Donald Trump is the ideal candidate, for whom Donald Trump represents their interests perfectly.
Of course. Mostly the wealthy elite.
Friends. Yeah.
Yeah, his best friends. Honestly, what we're going to talk about is we're going to focus on Democrats today, because what would be a liberal podcast if we just bashed the right all the time, right? We're gonna focus on our own people right now, and I really don't care if people get offended. But back to I'm very good at getting a point and stretching it too far. We're called the Broletariat because Bernie Bros was a very lazy, very unsuccessful, unintellectual kind of name for people like us. So we made it into a pun. We're going with it.
Of course, it took leftist irony boys to come up with a self-deprecating pun that's actually worth anything.
Pretty much. And Omar was actually the one who was actually a super anti-logo. He was like, no, we can't use that. We can't use that. Yeah. Part of me agrees, just because I've already seen that the Twitter account, which you can now follow us on Twitter at Real Broletariat. It's a big fuck you to Donald Trump's account as well. But you can follow us there. I've noticed that people, mostly Clinton supporters, are already kind of blocking the account because they're just assuming things by the logo. But if that's the kind of open-mindedness that we're seeing from the Democratic Party, then I don't care if they block us.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of Red Scare that still exists in America.
Of course.
So, the thing is that commie-phobia or whatever is just kind of unnecessary at this point. I don't think we can really be as afraid of communists in the 21st century as we need to be of actual Nazis, which and if it came to it again, I would want to ally ourselves with communists against Nazis than Nazis against communists. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if that if that, God forbid, that ever became necessary, like I would still partner with Stalin against Hitler than Hitler against Stalin. Like,
I'm a little more neutral on that topic just because looking back at history, both Stalin and Hitler were terrible human beings. They both had their own terrible genocides. That is the perfect example of far, far left, but I wouldn't even call Stalin far, far left just because he masked himself as far, far left. But you get my concern there. Versus far, far right.
I think Lenin even drifted away from being a leftist after the revolution. I mean, he coined the term state capitalism, and I mean that's really where Russia is. I mean, in China too, honestly, at this point. It's not a communist. I mean, the thing, like, a lot of communists will say like that we've never even tried communism, so you can't actually critique communism. And I mean, that's
we've tried communism, but it doesn't last long.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, and especially like anarcho-communism, because where there's a vacuum of power, there will always be some force that takes that power.
Of course. Honestly, points that we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about the primary election. We're going to talk about what went wrong. Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, the other guys who I couldn't name, but, who cares? We're going to talk about the Bernie Sanders wing of the party kind of forming itself. We're seeing institutions, I should say, forming up. We got the Justice Democrats. We have, to the extent, the rise of the Democratic Socialists of America and the Green Party. Those kind of names, the latter two are, of course, already well established, but they're rising powers now with these types of people.
Yeah.
And one thing is on our mind as a progressive. It's not 2020. It's 2018, because that is where the next election cycle is coming out, where people like us, people like you, I'm hoping, if you're listening to this podcast, or along those lines, the average progressive is looking for a progressive candidate that is going to primary and defeat a Clintonite robotic politic, one of those politician, I should say, those middle of the ground neoliberals, et cetera, who have just been running this party into the ground.
Well, and
but
I mean,
2020.
This is really the struggle that Democrats have to face, because the people who don't vote in midterm elections are young people. Like, the very people who Democrats desperately need to come out and vote do not vote in midterm elections, and the only way to get them to come out and vote is to inspire them in the way that someone like Bernie Sanders did.
Here's the thing, though. As you're saying, inspiration is big, because the millennials have already said, hey, if you just like adopt New Dealism and equality and this like really progressive platform, you'll have a base for life.
Yeah.
The next 8 generations will be following you, because that's kind of what they're setting it out to be. But the Democratic Party is just like, yeah, no, we don't need you.
The Democratic Party will embrace white feminism, will softly embrace Black Lives Matter, will just barely touch on like no DAPL and like no Keystone and all this, and and just like barely touch it to give minor pandering to people like in college or whatever who think like, oh wow, this means the Democratic Party is like the Justice Party. They will give you all of that pandering without actually giving you any substance before they ever prepare to abandon neoliberalism. They are fully committed to neoliberalism, and they will sell you down the river before they even think of touching it.
And speaking of neoliberalism, just asking, I know I sent you my draft for the first 2 chapters or so of the book that I'm writing about neoliberalism and modern American politics. Did you ever get a chance to start that?
I did. I did not get a chance to write you like my preliminary thoughts on it, but I think it's a good start. I think it's a promising first 2 chapters to a promising book.
And that since you already have read this kind of coming out, and people who have been reading my site for long enough know my stances on this, then you already know the direction I'm taking this towards neoliberalism. We tried compromising in this party. We really did. And I hate how people who are centrists who are going to look at the progressive unit and go radical, 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 when it's pretty obvious that the centrists at this point are the people who are not swerving with the party. A party is supposed to accept the platform of the people, not the platform of themselves. And it looks like the Democrats have been doing that for way too long. The Democratic Party has actually survived something like this before, back during civil rights. The whole pendulum kind of finally switching party to party, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what I would say is that I mean, this is the nature of politics. Is that political parties respond to their voter bases, and when a political party stops doing that, they die. I mean,
exactly,
and that's where the Democrats are at this point. I mean,
yes.
when Eisenhower was around and infrastructure was this key component of the Republican platform, that was because infrastructure jobs were extremely necessary. That's because rebuilding after World War II was extremely necessary, and Eisenhower got those things done because they were popular. But as soon as they were no longer popular, like, the Republicans went out of favor for a minute. I mean, for a minute in politics, that is. I mean,
I see that.
This is the thing, is that nothing the Democrats are pushing forward is popular in the least. People vote for Democrats because they do not want Republicans, because Republicans are so awful.
Well, that's just what we're seeing. We're seeing the Republicans drag the entire platform of politics so far to the right that even a centrist looks better. And I'm going to say that now. A neoliberal is by all times better in every way, shape, or form. A neoliberal is better than a fascist when comparative. However,
that's pretty much saying that soft fascism is better than hard fascism.
Pretty much, yeah, if to an extent. But it's also, that's where you're getting me caught there. It's also to the point where after so many years of fascism, after so many years of neoliberalism, a lot of people start to look towards the far left or far right as a suitable method of getting out of said of a system. And I have to say, America is a bipartisan society. It's always been, unfortunately. We rely on two distinct political voices.
Except for Lincoln. Like, Lincoln.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that was a pretty, like, gargantuan shift going on at about that time. So
but there are always going to be the exceptions to political power. But for the most part, I should say, America's been a bipartisan society, right?
Yeah.
We rely on two very, very distinct political voices. One from the so-called left, right now the Democratic Party. One from the so-called right, the Republican Party. Now, we also see smaller and less vocal roles, right, from these independents and the other random third parties, like the Constitution Party and the DSA and the Green Party.
Oh, wait,
I think I already said Green Party.
The DSA doesn't run candidates. It's like a political action committee. Honestly, it's.
Did they not run some sort of candidate somewhere?
No. They support progressive Democrats, basically.
Okay. I thought they did something along those lines. I could have sworn I heard someone from DSA doing something. I think in New York, but I might be wrong.
You might be thinking of the Socialist Alternative Party, who actually they got I think a city councilwoman elected in Seattle. What's her name? Like, I actually like follow her on Twitter or something because she's pretty awesome, but I don't remember her name right now. Anyway, yeah, but one councilwoman in Seattle does not a new wholesome political movement make.
That's not a big thing. That's why there are these like random little voices that aren't really making much progress yet. I'm not going to ever say no, it's never going to be anything.
Well, the thing is that we have a federal society, for as much as it does help, it really, like, do vote in your local elections. That's extremely important, and you can affect your local elections far more than you'll ever be able to affect national elections. But
of course. But in a national election, you're only stuck between two candidates is the problem. And if you always vote two candidates, then you're going to make a two-party system. If you start from the ground up, that's where progressivism went wrong. A lot of these people saw Bernie Sanders as the savior and then never really did anything else. You know.
And Bernie Sanders, to his credit, did try to turn his campaign, although it ultimately failed, into a lasting sort of
money machine.
Well, I mean, he started Our Revolution, which I don't know what that's actually done, but Noam Chomsky actually made the comment that Bernie Sanders, is an overall positive force. But he's going to. Noam Chomsky predicted that he would fail in the primary, just because the forces against him were too strong, and there would be no.
Oh yeah, everyone assumed that.
And then there'd be no infrastructure, so his campaign would just be like this one-time thing that was ultimately fruitless. And I'm glad to see that.
I don't go that far.
I'm glad to see that hasn't been the case.
Yeah. I'm actually on their website right now, and it looks like they just copied and pasted the Bernie Sanders website code over to this and called it that.
What? So
But they do have a candidates page.
the Socialist Alternatives website?
No, the Our Revolution site.
Yeah, it's pretty much the exact same thing.
Wow. Okay, their 2017 endorsement saved 3 people: Vincent Fort of Georgia for the mayor of Atlanta, Monica Kurth from Iowa '89, and Keith Ellison for the DNC chair. By the way, speaking of DNC chair, who do you support for that?
All right. Here's the thing.
I'm not happy with any of them.
Here's the thing: is that I like ideally Bernie Sanders would be the DNC chair because he's the second most influential Democrat in the Senate right now, and I mean, clearly Clinton has failed. So if no one else is going to take it up, then I'd just like either Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren to take it up. Like I don't think we want some busybody micromanaging it like Debbie Wasserman Schultz was. Like,
oh yeah, no.
I think honestly, let's just take a moment to hate on Debbie Wasserman Schultz, like because I think she's single-handedly run the Democratic Party into the ground the past 8 years.
Well, I wouldn't say single-handedly. She's had a lot of help, but she's been one of the major reasons why the Democratic Party is no longer the powerhouse that it used to be. I do believe that. Honestly, we've had some really sucky DNC chairs since Howard Dean. Like, remember when Tim Kaine was like part-time for like 2 years or however long he was in?
By the way, Tim Kaine and Chuck Schumer. Guess how many of Trump's picks they voted against for his cabinet? They voted against none of them. They voted yes to every single appointee. Thank you for
even wait. Tim Kaine voted yes on DeVos?
I mean, look it up, but I'm pretty sure.
I think he said no to DeVos just because of that whole... Yeah, Tim Kaine, Betsy DeVos is the wrong choice 3 days ago.
Oh, good. Well, that's the thing is that...
Kaine opposed DeVos.
As much as these people are tone deaf and will not abandon their neoliberalism and will not abandon their corporate donors, no matter, like, how much other fake concessions they make to you. If you do pressure them, they will feel pressured. Like, politicians are not lizards in meat suits. Like,
yeah,
they actually.
I do want to say real quick, just before we go off on a tangent. Like, I just want to talk about how terrible of a vice presidential candidate that Tim Kaine was.
Oh my God, you might as well have run with a box of Kleenex tissues, to be honest.
I'm sorry, what? You cut out for a little bit.
She might as well have run with a box of Kleenex.
Oh yeah, I really didn't. I had a whole short list that I actually published of people who I thought, and Tim Kaine was actually so low on my short list that I didn't even mention him in there.
Yeah,
and I just saw Tim Kaine as nothing more than Clinton running to the right to gain more moderate centrist when in fact she just needed the progressives.
You know that video going around where people, like, where college students get asked, who's the vice president? Like they'll get asked, like, who's the president? They'll be like, Barack Obama. And they'll be like, who's the vice president? And they'll just, like, stare blankly.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know that. And it's like, oh, these are college students. And obviously, they selectively find those college students, and they only, like, pick out the worst examples. I'm sure the majority of college students know that Joe Biden was the vice president. But at this point, like, if Kaine was the vice president, I legitimately think that the vast majority of people in any social strata would not know that he even exists. Like, they would have never heard of Tim Kaine's name at all.
Well, he's terrible. And you even look at what the news did. Oh, the news was like, oh, he got an F rating after the NRA. An F rating from the NRA, I should say. Well, yeah, because I think he was the governor at the time during the Virginia Tech massacre.
Oh, can we just?
Of course, he better get an F rating after that.
Yeah.
He's got an A rating. He's got an A rating from Planned Parenthood. Yeah, but if you listen to his speeches, oh, my faith makes me pro-life, but my politics make me pro-choice.
Honestly, I think this is the perfect example is gun control because, okay, personally, I am in favor of, like, I think I'm in favor of gun control as much as the average American is, which is, like, I don't think people with schizophrenia should own guns, like, but I think that if you're competent with a gun and if you've practiced with it enough that you've gotten certified, then you're allowed to have a gun. Like,
yes,
I don't really see a problem with that. And also I think if you're suicidal at all, because like 2/3 of gun deaths are suicides, I think you shouldn't have access to a gun. We come from the same page on that. But regulation needs to be higher, and
more extensive than just what it is now.
Yeah.
But anybody who is just like take away all the guns, like I believe like nobody should have an AR-15 because the creator of that damn gun said this is for a battlefield, not the streets.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The only people who should have AR-15s in the homeland are police officers, and that should be limited.
I don't even go that far.
And that should be limited. But I mean, an average police officer should not be carrying an AR-15. I mean,
no, I even go further than that and go police officers shouldn't have that. I believe that's an army grade weapon that shouldn't even really be domestically used. In fact, if I had it my way, obviously,
the problem is if there's a violent criminal rampaging through the streets with an AR-15, which is an extremely likely scenario, which has happened several times in the past few years.
Every single mass shooting in quite some time. I'm not, I think it was Dylan Stormaroof. Didn't he use an AR-15?
I actually don't know what he used.
I actually wrote an article on this, so let me I'm already here, so I might as well just check this. But the AR-15
from the reports that I've heard, Dylan Roof went into the prayer session, sat there for about 30 minutes, went back to his car, got his AR-15, went back in the church, and...
All right, no, it's not Dylan. So the four main gun incidents that use an AR-15, that's why I'm getting it mixed up, because, we've had like 8 or 9 in the past 4 years.
I mean, this is what's so depressing.
That are major.
It's like someone's listening to this podcast, and they're like, aha, the libs don't know, like, which gun was used. And it's like, no, I mean, that's a bad thing.
There's too fucking many.
There have been so many massacres that we don't know which gun was used.
But I can tell you right now, to that one conservative guy who's like, oh, the libtards don't know what gun was used. No, I misspoke. Not misspoke. I got my information because I mistook it for mistook it. Is that a word?
Yes, mistook.
Mistook, yeah. Mistaken, mistook, whatever. I got it confused with one of these 4: Sandy Hook, the Aurora movie theater shooting, San Bernardino, and Orlando, the Orlando massacre. Stay strong, Orlando. Those 4 things, they all had one thing. It was a mass shooting with an AR-15.
So, and also,
it's
like these right wingers, they fantasize about like, oh, but if only there was a good guy with a gun. Okay, but we have data on this, and when there's a good guy with a gun, they
run away.
No, and that just makes things worse because you shoot randomly into a crowd, and
it's either that or you run away. Like you take it or not.
The worst thing is that when the police finally do arrive there, they don't know who is the threat and who is the good guy with a gun, quote unquote.
The good guy with the gun should be the police officer as well.
To an extent, I don't think communities should be overly reliant on the police to protect them, because
not at all.
Because the police are so often like doing the exact opposite of that.
Well, that's why we look at Reformation, and when we look at bringing in new Reformation to this, new restraints, we don't only just increase the mental testing for getting a gun. We should also increase what it means to be a freaking police officer, and not let these type of people, that we hear about constantly enter the force.
Oh God, I need to look this up, because there was some like expose done in a police department in the United States, that is, where like police officers who scored too high on an intelligence test were turned away from the job. Like, yeah, if that's not the definition of like, yeah, I mean, I think we should like link to it in the description box or whatever.
I will, if I remember to do that, I will do that. But as I've already said about this podcast, that I don't know if how many people have heard, we are doing absolutely no editing to this, because honestly, what's the point of editing if we just cut out all our mistakes?
Yeah, no, we definitely make mistakes. We're gonna go ahead and own those.
Like obviously, like certain little mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We're just, but we correct ourselves as we go as well. So at least you have that.
yeah, exactly. Oh, there's also a gun club called the Huey P. Newton gun club. If I'm not mistaken, and they exclusively act in majority black communities and try to get the people there not just guns, but try to get them trained in how to use guns, and so they have self-defense to both combat like local crime and also protect yourself against very real state violence. So if you want to look,
I'm already on it.
Yeah, are you looking at it?
Yeah, I'm their website's trash, but I've never actually heard of these people before. So,
but yeah, their website is probably like pretty low grade, because I mean, yeah. But and the funniest thing was like all the white people on my Facebook who are normally like, the NRA, a true bastion of American ideals. This is what the founding fathers wanted when they wrote the Second Amendment. those same people were like, "Oh my God, black people with guns. That's."
Yeah.
I mean, it's just pretty funny to see.
That's always the negative of racism and that kind of stuff. And those type of people, it's if it's good in one scenario and it's not good in another. If you have to replace one word with another and then suddenly it's bad, like maybe you should stop. Maybe you should get off your soapbox and come down to reality for a bit.
Guns are only good when I have them, basically.
Pretty.
But I mean that's the reactionary position.
I do want to say that's also though what a lot of Republicans have. There were several. I think Dick Cheney was one of them, and there was one female Republican as well. I'm not going to remember her name though. They were anti-LGBT until like their daughter or son came out as LGBT. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, yeah, I do remember Dick Cheney doing that, and then
Dick Cheney did that and with his daughter, and I remember there was I think there was some female Republican. I don't remember if she was a senator or a representative or anything. Honestly, I don't really remember or care.
In the rural town I grew up in, like I knew adults whose children came out, and then like their entire worldview shifted. But But the only thing they shifted on was that like gay people have rights now. Like,
yeah.
Otherwise they were like, but the transgenders are still disgusting or whatever. Like.
Oh, obviously, because you only care when something happens to you,
exactly.
And that kind of shift happens. There was also Republicans who were very, very anti stem cell research until their god Ronald Reagan got whoa, that almost misspoke there.
Jesus Christ.
I haven't slept very well since the last podcast. I'm going to admit, but Alzheimer's, obviously. I even caught myself mid-word, conservatives. Yeah. But yeah, like you see those types of things where until something happens to you and your world, you don't care about the rights of other people or the meanings of other people.
Yeah. I mean, I just think of the poor stem cells. Every time you ejaculate. You've committed a genocide. I hope you realize that.
But I do have to ask, if and I am not encouraging violence at all. I want to make that clear. As we discussed in the last podcast, violence is not the way to get change to happen.
No, I'm mostly a pacifist, but I think violent resistance is appropriate when when you are faced with violence. And
there was that picture I should say, that I actually posted on the Broletariat account the other day, I think, where it says this is what happens when protesters are peaceful, and it actually shows the I think they deleted it because I'm looking through it now, but this is what happens when you're a peaceful protester, and it's that picture of all the people sitting on the floor protesting and the police officer in a the bulletproof vest and helmet is pepper spraying the whole line.
Here's the irony. That actually was at UC Berkeley.
Yeah, that's why I retweeted it. I'm actually looking
for such perfect irony because obviously the students learned their lesson, and honestly, I don't think I want to return to that really quickly before I finish. I went on this whole tangent about guns to make a point that I'll get back to in a second, but I wanted to just clarify my position on violence and violent protest from last podcast, from episode 0. And I mean, I didn't
the non-canon episode.
Yeah, well, I probably came off as like a Castroan revolutionary or whatever because Omar just talked over me when I was trying to give my explanation. But my position on violent resistance is that it is appropriate in some scenarios. There's I think it's immoral to if you see someone being killed by a fascist or a Nazi or by a Stalinist or whatever, and you have the means to stop that from happening, I think it is immoral to not stop that from happening. I think pacifism is sometimes not moral.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, that's the bystander effect as well. If you're witnessing someone getting hurt and no one around you is stepping up, is it not your moral duty to stand up and say something? And that's the issue with human mentality there as well.
I think most liberals are able to grasp that, but I think you start losing most liberals when you say someone's speech can actually have violent consequences, so some speech needs to be abridged. I mean, the classic example obviously is shouting fire in a crowded movie theater because everyone's going to get up and leave and people are going to get trampled, and also it's just an inconvenience, so you shouldn't be allowed to do that at the very least. But I mean, that's not only is that super trite, but I mean there are current examples of that. Like Milo was planning to oust a few undocumented students at UC Berkeley, and that didn't happen.
And that is where I would like to say that I believe freedom of speech has like three main points of rebuttal, meaning like you've lost your chance to have freedom of speech right now. And I don't remember all three, but I remember slander and libel are there, aren't they?
Well, actually, I'm not. I used to be like more sure about that because someone on would get on Fox News and like decry like some guy at NASA or something as being a fraud, and like in that case, I think that guy should be able to sue. You know, like I think a scientist whose peer-reviewed research is brought into question by like some mega pastor or something should be able to sue that corporation of a church, but like Donald Trump, for example, sued Bill Maher over, you know, a joke where Bill Maher said like, "Prove you're not an orangutan," and Donald Trump produced his birth certificate like, in response to the whole. Like, I'll try to find that it's from like.
I remember when that happened. Actually,
it was like 3 years ago at this point, so
yeah,
kind of old.
It was around the same time
but
he
Donald,
was storming
Donald
off
Trump,
about birth certificates.
Donald Trump is going to be one of the most anti-free speech presidents in American history. Like,
oh yeah,
you're a historian, so you obviously know what the Alien and Sedition Acts were, right?
Yeah.
So that was the first major challenge to like the First Amendment in American history, and I think we're about to see like the most awful set of challenges against free speech since then. Because I think if anyone says, I mean, Donald Trump took the opportunity to speak in front of the CIA, you know, as president the first time.
Yeah.
Not to like brief them on what he wants them to, you know, work on toward national security or all that. I mean, he spent the vast majority of the time telling these deep state psychopaths in the CIA how big his inauguration crowd size was, because he's.
I would just like to say super quick, like I don't mean to interrupt at all, but I just tried Googling the Trump and Bill Maher thing.
Bill Maher.
Bill Maher, sorry. I'm half awake still.
Yeah. There is Bill Moyers, but it wasn't Bill Moyers.
I would just like to say, like, I'm in the process of Google. I was trying to find the actual document for it. And by the way, I do watch Maher all the time, so I don't want it to make it seem like I have no idea who he is based on that misspell. Okay, don't let me ask you to record while I'm in this state anymore. I think it's the Super Bowl, though, because Google's down, and I'm being forced to use Bing for the first time in my life.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like, it's giving me an error 500. We're having a problem with our server at the moment. Logo.
I wonder if they crashed Google. It seems almost impossible to do, but
if you want to check, go ahead. But I'm being forced to use Bing to come up with the document.
Google's working for me. I think it's just you. Like whatever your rig is, it's totally fucked up.
I don't know. Obviously I don't expect this to be crashed because Google's Google. It's our Lord and Savior. But
yeah.
Oh, now it's working magically. Okay, I don't know. Anyways, sorry about that.
Right, but I mean, we have a petulant child as president. We have a like 70-year-old man who will.
I believe the last president, just real quick on free speech, the last president to fire their acting attorney general or attorney general in general, I should say, is Nixon, was it not?
I honestly couldn't tell you, but that wouldn't surprise me. Also,
I think it was
the last guy to be buddy with the CIA and like directed to do some awful things was Nixon.
Yeah. So, that we know of.
Well, I mean, yeah, everyone up to Obama has done shady shit with the CIA, but like
I still think Obama has done shady shit with the CIA. We're just not going to be able to hear about it for a while.
Absolutely has, but I
mean,
yeah,
absolutely.
But shady shit also doesn't mean like that it was a net bad thing. It just means that it was like it means it was unobjectionably illegal. So I mean, like. But the thing is that we have the oldest, fattest, ugliest, fucking dumbest president in possibly ever. And
I'd just like to say, if either of us turn up dead, you know what happened.
Oh yeah, actually there was there's some journalist who got drugged.
The Russian journalist.
Yeah, well, I mean, not just yeah. If Trump starts treating the media the way Putin does.
We're gonna have a bad time. This was a very bad time to start up this kind of podcast.
We're gonna be relying more and more on people like Glenn Greenwald, for example. We're gonna be relying on journalists who are not published in the New York Times and Washington Post. I mean, we're going to be relying on both the left and the right. I assume is going to be.
Dude, did you know there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? There are like 6 actual candidates. One that is potential, one that is withdrawn, and like a whole bunch of them that declined for the 2017 DNC election.
You mean the chair?
Yeah, the chair.
Is Ellison still in the running?
Yeah, he's very high up in the running. Howard Dean withdrew.
I just want to say like something about Keith Ellison really quick, and I think we've gone on like our 4th tangent now, and then we're
if you expected like a single, podcast. if you a viewer or a reader or whatever you're going to be titled as here, a listener, I should say, because for once I'm not writing this, I'm talking this. As you can see, my writing skills are better than my speaking skills.
That goes for both of us.
Yeah, terrible podcast. 0 out of 5 would not listen to again.
This is absolute shit. If you've gotten this far, then but just reevaluate your life.
If you expected one coherent, concept flowing here, no, this is unscripted, unedited, and we really don't care. So expect tangents.
Here's the thing. I think Bernie Sanders said an excellent thing when he said like, do not treat me as like an idol. Like do not. I forget how he phrased it exactly, but I mean, he did.
You're making it sound like it's from the Bible, man.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it wasn't. Bernie Sanders isn't very articulate when he speaks normally. He's very plain spoken, but the way he said it was essentially like this movement is bigger than Bernie Sanders. This movement, is what's important. Like I, as a candidate, am not the entirety of this movement. So,
and of course, most of the quote unquote Bernie bros are going to ignore that and just keep worshiping him.
Yeah, and that's to say, I actually like Bernie Sanders a lot. Like
so do I.
Yeah, if I could like have lunch with any politician in Congress, at least I would want it to be Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think as far as like Ellison for DNC chair goes, because Bernie Sanders supports him, I think that's pretty much all I need to support Keith Ellison for the chair position. Like that doesn't mean I'm not willing to criticize Ellison as soon as he gets in that chair. Like people have confronted me on Facebook all the time and been like, "Well, if Hillary Clinton had won, I bet you'd be complaining about that too." And I'm like,
yeah,
actually,
I would have
exactly, and that goes
probably just as much.
And that goes for Bernie Sanders as well. Like Bernie Sanders is not perfect. Like no candidate. No, this is what people don't understand about politics, especially like people who voted for Trump because they thought Trump would be like this savior, and it's quickly not becoming a savior, like at all.
He's becoming quite the opposite.
Yeah, there's no politician, there's no person in this world who you'll agree with on absolutely every topic. And if there is, then,
who the hell is Pete? How the hell do I pronounce this last name?
What?
I don't know. I don't want to say this name wrong because I really just don't want to be that rude. But how do I pronounce?
Just go for it. It's
No, I'm gonna. I've already messed up enough
it's
today.
It's not
man.
the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's it's just a podcast. Just go for it.
One of the guys who's running for the DNC chair is someone I've never heard of. He's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and his name is Pete Buttigieg. I don't even want to attempt to pronounce it. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Some sycophantic fucking freak probably.
I don't know, but he looks like a robot, and his background it looks kind of good actually. But I'm looking at his Wikipedia article, so please don't hold that against me if he's not. He is. Wait a second.
Anyway,
winning I want to talk about this guy for a second. Go
ahead.
His winning essays.
So I know what the fuck you're talking about.
Just look up Pete Buttigieg, and I really don't mean to be offensive, but I don't even want to pronounce that last name. Can I like put this in a Google Translate live on here and make it tell me it? I think I can.
I might. I mean, I don't know.
No, I can do it right now. I just don't know if it's going to catch up on my side, right?
What is this guy? 14? Jesus Christ.
Exactly. But hold on. What is this? That did not help at all.
Oh,
did you hear that?
It should be that dog who's like the mayor of like whatever that.
All right.
Is.
Are you ready? Tell me if you can hear this. Buttigieg. Right, I'm sorry about this, but I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm very sorry. Anyways, he looks like a robot. He looks like a Marco Rubio on the left, but he apparently is the I have no idea. He's the first openly gay executive of Indiana, though.
I mean, good for him, I guess.
Yeah, June 16th, 2015.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, Keith Ellison is something like one of the first Muslims ever elected to Congress, if not the first Muslim elected to Congress. And I mean, that's because he just happens to be. I mean, it's not because he's Muslim, but anywhere else, like a Muslim would not have been elected, except for like the area of Michigan that Keith Ellison is from. And,
this guy had a. It looks like he's gotten a downgrade. He used to be the candidate in 2010 for the state treasurer of Indiana, but he lost, and now he's a mayor of South Bend.
I don't know if it's a downgrade, but
well, meaning in like terms of probably salary, honestly.
Anyway, look, any candidate. This is the point. I'll try to make it brief.
We keep going off on tangents. I'm sorry.
There's no person in this world who's going to agree with you on every topic, and there's no political figure who you're going to like support on everything they want to do. And I mean I think that's how participatory democracy works. Is that like you find the candidate who suits you best, and that's not exactly me advocating for lesser evilism, because if people were more engaged, we wouldn't need to defer to a lesser evil. We could have something that's relatively good, better than Bernie Sanders, even if you're a progressive or
Yeah.
But I mean that said, like Bernie Sanders, I mean, to clarify, I voted for Jill Stein only because of her running mate. But I didn't want to do that. Like, I didn't want to vote for anyone in this election, right? But voting shouldn't be a thing that you are like elated to do. Voting should be a thing that you do because it's a civic duty, and you're bettering your society.
I agree completely. I think we did talk about this in the episode 0. I forced myself first, and I was not happy about it. I begrudgingly. I was angry with myself. It hurt, but I cast my vote for Hillary Clinton because I felt like I'm in Florida. This is a swing state. I need to bite my tongue and just do the lesser evil.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't need to be a lesser evil if the primaries worked out the way they should have.
Yeah. And I didn't. I mean, that's the thing. It's like I didn't vote for Bernie Sanders, or I didn't want to vote for Bernie Sanders because I turned 18 after the fucking primary. R.I.P. But I didn't vote for Bernie Sanders, or want to, or advocate for him because I thought he was like the Messiah, or like the prophet reincarnate or whatever like that.
Now, people are turning him into that when he himself has said, "Please don't."
Like Bernie Sanders isn't the fucking like Buddha Vista or anything like that. I mean, he's just the best possible version of the Democratic Party at this point. Is the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. And
I'd like to make a quick injunction and just say that Google will not stop telling me to look up the Super Bowl results, and it looks like right now it's 3 for the Patriots and 21 for the Falcons.
Oh, that's fucking awesome! If it's 21 for the Falcons, then I'm out of that $20 I owe my friend for betting him that Donald Trump would lose Florida.
Does that mean he gives you money, or does that just mean you're
it's
alleviated from the test?
No, it's double or nothing. If he wins this bet, then I owe him $40. So.
Anyway, sorry about that. It's just that I'm trying to date the podcast, I guess. For anybody who cares, it's 8:25 p.m. on Super Bowl Sunday, so continue.
Yeah, it's February 5th, just to be clear. I don't know when we're going to release this. I don't see any reason not to release this like today or tonight or tomorrow.
Because the Super Bowl will literally drain every single fucking view, every single minuscule view that this is going to get regardless, so I might as well wait until it's over.
Yeah, I think tomorrow evening would be safe, but if you want to wait until like next Thursday, I think that's kind of lazy because we didn't bring the band back together for this one.
Well, I'm just gonna say I don't know how you feel about this yet, and I should probably be waiting until the end of the podcast. But if you got time after this one's wrapped up, we might as well go ahead and start on the third one second one, whatever.
I don't see it. Yeah, episode 2 it would be, because this is the first one in canon.
Yeah. Look at us. It's the co-creators of the show bitching about what to do after they're done with the podcast live on stream. This is fantastic.
I think we've gone on for about 5 minutes between Buttiger or whatever his name is and this, and the only substantive point I've made is that Bernie Sanders isn't a messiah, but he is the best possible.
No, he's not.
But like, how
long have we been recording this one?
We're at about 50 minutes. Now, I do want to drive this point home, though. Like we need to be clear that Bernie Sanders isn't perfect, but the more important point, because everyone already knows that, is that Bernie Sanders is the best possible version of the Democratic Party at this point in history. And
Yeah.
And if we don't go toward the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, not only will the Democratic Party be a shitty party, but it'll also be a completely failed party, because no one likes the Democratic Party in its current form. The only people who vote Democrat are people who don't want the Republicans to win. There's no...
Well, don't go that far, because there are some Clintonites that would die for Clinton for some god-awful reason.
No, but there are also people who don't want the Republicans to win. I mean, if you look at like income scales and who votes for which party, like the people who make under $50,000 a year vote for Democrats. The Democrats are still the party of the poor and workers. They're just a shitty workers' party, and
oh shit.
And the Republicans get people who are like 50,000 to like basically until like you're about a millionaire, and then if you're an elitist millionaire, you're going to vote Democrat because you're educated and you've got some sense of ethics, even though you're kind of like most like elitist liberals, although they're like...
Well, unless you're like a billionaire and then you want to be a Trump supporter.
Yeah, and exactly. And then like after a certain multi-million-dollar income, you become a Trump supporter again, or like a Republican again. But like the vast majority of like people I've talked to who are at that elitist level where they'll vote Democrat because it's like the right moral duty thing to do and not like a matter of survival for you. Like they're kind of aloof. They kind of like they're good people fundamentally, but they're just like slay Queen Clinton, like
yeah. I hate those people in politics, honestly.
They're the only people who like heard Hillary Clinton say that Donald Trump supporters are a basket of deplorables, and they were like, oh my god, that is like so true. I mean, and I'm not just talking about like people in Hollywood or anything like that. I live in Sarasota for college, and like there's a lot of wealth disparity around here, so it's interesting. It's like on one side of the tracks you have rich people who vote for Clinton, and on the other side of the tracks you have extremely poor people who vote for Clinton.
Yeah, I see that. I just need to ask. I don't know if I actually went through because I cut out for a little tiny bit while I asked, but how long have we been going for this one?
I answered 50.
Because I didn't hear it, yeah.
Yeah, it's 52 and a half now. So,
okay. Let's just cut this one off at around, like, how long was the first one? Like an hour and 12? Let's stop this at 112. Stop me when we get there.
Okay.
To wrap this all up for the conversation, unless you have something that you'd like to
I want to go all the way back to my gun control tangent, because, again, it's an issue, and this ties into what I was saying about, like, how there's liberal elitists who vote Democrat, but like they're only a small portion of the Democratic Party, and we need to stop pandering to them exclusively and start, like, I don't know, creating an actual workers' party, not this failed mess that the Democratic Party is. Gun control isn't something that anyone really cares about, except for those like extremely rich elitists, and it's something that the Democrats will give you before they ever even think of like abandoning neoliberalism.
I fully agree that I basically see that the Democrats have proven, at least the ones that are currently in office that are not super left, quote unquote super left, I should say. I believe that they're in for their own interests, and that brought me back to my committing violence. I believe I said this probably half an hour ago.
Oh, wait.
I bring back to your gun control point.
I want to say one more thing about that, though, is that this manifested itself perfectly during the primary when Bernie Sanders, who has like a D- rating from the NRA, lost like the vote of people who for whom like gun control is their only issue, because Hillary Clinton had an F from the NRA, like because Bernie Sanders didn't fail hard enough at pleasing the NRA, like these people. These absolute like aloof dimwits just
I noticed that the single voter issues where that's all they care about. That's one of the big things that happen in politics as well. But the point that I responded with to you, I just want to make sure, is did I cut out or no?
Yeah. What? Sorry, what was that?
Did I cut out?
At some point I think you might have cut out, but
okay.
Just
magical.
My tangent's pretty much finished. You can go ahead.
Well, my tangent's still related to your tangent. Like 30 minutes ago, I said that because 30 minutes ago I said I don't mean to condone violence, and then we just hurled off into the atmosphere about that. But I want you to think of all these NRA guys, all of these big gun associates, aficionados, the quote unquote Republicans in office that are being pocketed money by the NRA. And I'm not inciting violence. I'm absolutely not. Okay. But what would happen if these type of people suddenly were faced with a situation like the Aurora movie theater shooting, or like Sandy Hook, and let's just say,
picture Mitch McConnell. Picture Mitch McConnell's face. Now, picture Mitch McConnell's face as he's holding a shotgun and preparing to defend himself with it.
Yeah, no, he ain't doing it. He isn't. He's just gonna run.
Or Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich is like the human manifestation of a pug. Like, it's just not gonna happen.
But then you also look at what happens if they're put in the emotional stress of, let's say, I'm not going to give a name either because I don't want to incite anything. Let's just say a Republican, a super far right, super pro gun, comes home from work one day to hear that his kid was shot at school and died in school, along with 6 other kids. Or let's say that he and his wife go out to a movie theater just to watch the brand new, whatever they want to watch. I don't know what's hip with the kids or what's out in the theaters. I don't get out much. And let's just say they go to the theaters and they sit down, and all of a sudden, right as the movie theater is about to close down the lights, a guy with a gun stands up and shoots his wife and 7 other people and runs out of the theater. Let's say this type of person wakes up one morning and decides that they're going to go out to a supermarket or anything, and they get shot and nearly die just because there's a madman with an AR-15 running down the road. You have to think about that. As I said before, people like Dick Cheney were anti-LGBT until someone in their immediate circle was affected by LGBT. People like these Republicans in the 80s were anti-medicine until their president developed a sickness that needed medicine.
Or in the 80s until someone they loved got like AIDS, and because Reagan defunded the CDC, that person was just like subjected to deal with the HIV/AIDS virus completely on their own.
So, of course, and that's when I look at these people, and I look at these pro-gun nut jobs. A lot of them politicians who are being paid by the NRA. I want to know how much money, Mitch McConnell would take from the NRA, or Paul Ryan would take from the NRA, if he himself was in a tragedy that so many Americans have found themselves in due to the rising threat of gun violence, right?
Yeah,
and it's just. It's shocking. It's shocking putting yourself in someone else's perspective that matters.
I'm honestly not sure, because I don't think that people on the right, or people who are reactionary or fear-driven in general, are completely devoid of empathy. I think that their sense of empathy is a lot less global than liberals and leftists in general, and like they only are able to process.
Well, of course, but when you put them in one of those situations, though, if you put them in one of those situations, I'm not talking like empathy on a slight, No,
that's what I'm saying, is that their sense of empathy is much more like reserved for their immediate family, and they're not really able to like process empathy like in a more global sense. And I'm not saying that like I am able to like identify and empathize with someone in a foreign country whom I don't know, but I can, like, in a vague sense think, oh, I hope that everyone in the world is doing well. And I think the reactionary mindset is that I hope my family is doing well and everyone else can die for all I care. And so, I mean, it's not even meant to be a joke. I think if one of these guys, like if someone they loved died in one of these tragedies, that their entire worldview would be shifted. But the chances of that happening are so low that I don't even like to entertain that hypothetical. I think it's kind of just... I
don't want to entertain it just on morals.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of cruel to think like, oh, well, what if Mitch McConnell's like daughter died like, I mean, that doesn't help anyone. I hope that doesn't happen.
Of course.
I hope like... I would hope that like Mitch McConnell gets voted out of office and replaced with someone who's like sensible.
Oh, of course, 100%.
Like that's.
I'm not entertaining. I don't want it to get confused by anybody watching. I'm not entertaining the notion that something like that happens. I'm entertaining the notion of, imagine how different it would be if the viewpoints were suddenly shifted. And that is where it actually is starting to form itself here, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say so. I would say that anytime.
All in all, we're looking. What?
Well, I would say that people's politics are driven primarily by their basic needs, and so if you're poor and your basic need is to earn a living wage, then that's going to be the primary driving force of your politics, regardless of what background you're from.
Yes.
You could be the most racist, cynical person in the world, but if you're not making enough to eat, then the party who's we're gonna fight for a $15 minimum wage is probably gonna be your party, regardless of whether that party is also for racial justice.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we have to pander to racists to win. I don't really think we do. I think our focus on the working class should be on the working class in inner cities, honestly. I mean, as Democrats.
Yeah.
But people's most vile convictions do not stand the test of their most basic human needs.
Yeah, I see that. That's the sociological and socioeconomic aspects of politics. It's pretty much how it's always been. It's pretty much how it always is going to be. But we're going to wrap up this one a little bit. I don't know if it's a little bit early, nor do I really care.
We still have about 11 minutes. But
Can I cut out?
Yeah, a little bit. We still have about 11 minutes, but we can end this.
All right, let's just cut it. We're just cut it here.
It's kind of.
I'd like to say overall.
At this point.
Yeah. Overall, we've talked about the state of the Democratic Party and the difference between these centrists and progressives. We talked a lot about gun violence for absolutely no reason, even though once again that wasn't on our point for the production plan.
Well,
but
I do think it was illustrative of the larger of the larger point that Democrats keep conceding insignificantly on issues that no one cares about. And,
of course.
And the heart of the problem is that they're corporatist shills, and until that
corporatist shills. What are we going to name this episode, by the way? I always like to hear ideas, even on live, and then people can see what the episode could have been named until we come up with something better off camera.
I hazard to say we should name it something like "We Told You So," but that might actually be a good idea. But I think more accurately, it's
tangents.
Tangents. But honestly, I think the theme of this podcast is everything except neoliberalism, because I mean that's really the thing. Democrats will concede on everything except neoliberalism, the one thing that they need to concede on.
All right. Overall, that's about it. That's episode 1, second episode. I know that's going to really be confusing as we go higher and higher. Episode 1 of the Broletariat. We're working on getting a website up. That is my number one priority currently. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Real Broletariat. You can follow me on Twitter at Publishing Minds, and Elijah's Twitter, ironically,
at Neoliberalism. We're
going to have links to all of those in the comments.
Yeah, go ahead with that.
You're going to explain yourself. Of course, my website, josephkaminski.org. I don't know if Elijah has a website that he'd like to plug.
No, I don't. And please don't try to find me on Facebook or anything like that. But, I mean, I tweet sometimes. I enjoy irony Twitter and gay Twitter, and that's about it, honestly.
Pretty interesting, pretty good. Follow Omar, even though he was a scrub and chose a Super Bowl over us, at Homie Dino. Once again, all 3 of our accounts are going to be in the description of this, and they're all on the actual Twitter at Real Proletariat. We are going to get a website. It's going to be a subdomain off mine, josephkaminski.org. You know where to go. You're probably watching this. If you're not watching it there, or you're watching it on YouTube, either way, it doesn't matter. I'm not making money off this anyways.
And Joe,
that's about it.
And Joe is an extremely knowledgeable historian and writes some badass articles, and honestly is one of the few people who writes think pieces that I enjoy, because I think most think pieces are absolute garbage. So definitely check out his site. If you're not checking out...
Did I cut out?
No, I was just plugging your site for you because I think I think it's wonderful.
Awesome. I got a plug from someone.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Thanks, man.
Someone who literally is your friend and is doing a podcast with you.
Yeah. Someone who's the co-host of my. You know what? You know my pod. You know my my website is good because both co-hosts of the podcast that's owned by the website say so.
Yeah, I might be a tad biased in that regard.
Tad. But yeah, check it out. Other than that, we're done. That's a wrap. Episode 1.
Right. Bye, everyone.
Don't forget to